Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the podcast. We're here together. We don't really know what to do.
We don't. We don't. But first of all, we want you all to notice something. Yesterday, I selfied myself in the airplane.
Oh, I have proof.
Because I started watching Melissa's unboxing, and I texted her, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me, right? We are dressed exactly alike."
Didn't even know we own the same thing. I'm getting social proof because if you don't have a picture, it didn't happen.
That's right.
So here's Megan's selfie. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Go there.
There we go. So it is true. We did not plan this. This is a complete accident.
And I don't really need my rep right now, but I had to have it on.
Here we are. Yeah.
So here we are, both in our leopard. And the good news is you can pretend that we're dressed for Halloween and that we're kitty cats because this is going to be on.
There we go.
Isn't it going to be on Halloween?
No, it's going to be on tonight.
Oh, it's tonight. Oh my gosh. What am I thinking?
So we're
tonight.
together. So let's back up.
Yes.
We are together. Well,
Today is
let's
actually.
way back up. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Melissa McCloud.
Yes.
I own the Will and the Floss in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. This is my partner in crime.
Hi, Megan Holmes. And I am actually here in Grosse Pointe. I'm here in up north Michigan, but I'm from
Austin.
St. Louis, Missouri, where I own the Needlepoint Clubhouse. And together, the two of us goofballs don't even know how to act together because typically we are apart on two different screens.
Oh, this is just weird.
But we're actually here. And the reason we're here is because this is the weekend of the virtual Needlepoint show.
Yes.
And we decided that instead of doing this by ourselves, we would get together at Melissa's gorgeous cottage up north here in Michigan. I'm looking at Lake Michigan, which is like my heart. And I think I'm looking at Lake Michigan. No, wait, is this
Lake Huron? Oh, God.
I'm looking at a Great Lake. How about that?
Yeah.
Anyway.
We're on the other side of the state, but that's okay.
I don't even know where I'm at, but it's fine. So it's early, and Melissa woke me up, and she's like, hey, we got to film a podcast today. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And then we wore our same shirts because we just thought that was funny. So
the fact that we're wearing the same thing is hysterical because we're really what we decided to do today is so many people ask us, how have you guys gotten to be such good friends? How do you know each other? What's your background? Like you guys should interview each other. So we thought, well, why not? And so we decided that
here we
should do that. But yeah, the fact that we're wearing the same thing when we really are never, ever even together is hysterical. So anyway.
We obviously know each other pretty well, and we even have like, what is that, like ESP or something?
I'm sorry for you.
So anyway, we won't sit on that any longer, but we just thought it was funny. So here we are.
So thank you for watching the podcast, though. This is Pointing It Out Podcast. If you haven't subscribed to us, please hit subscribe. That helps other Stitchers find us. And
we're just so excited. We've gotten such great feedback. We had no idea that anybody would want to watch our dog and pony show, but here we are, and it's so fun, and we appreciate you all. And like Melissa said, all the time people say, who are you? Why do you know each other? But, and you get tidbits and pieces of us when we are just like talking, but we're typically interviewing somebody else. So we decided to interview each other. This could be a giant crash of a mess, but here we are.
Good job cleaning up the language, girlfriends. I was waiting to see where you were going with that one. Okay, go ahead.
So let's start with you. We didn't decide, but I'll start with you. How about that? All right. So this is my pal, Melissa McCloud, as we all know, and I'm getting out of the screen. Sorry. We're like super awkward.
But I know. We don't know how to do this.
So first of all, you all may not know that Melissa grew up in Michigan. So tell us a little bit about that. So you grew up where?
Yeah, so I was just talking about, I'm really not that interesting. So I grew up where I now live. I did leave for a little while because, you got to leave sometime. I guess you don't have to, but I decided to. So, yes, I grew up in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. We're living the thumb. Let's see, is that forward?
Yeah, that looks good, actually.
So Detroit's here. For those of you, and this is, the Michigan Mitt. Everyone has to show off the Michigan Mitt. And just for a little sideline, we're up here right now. We're in the tip of the thumb at Port Austin.
Evidently by Lake Huron.
By Lake Huron, yes.
Anyway.
So I grew up in Michigan. I stayed there, obviously, through high school. And then went to college. I decided I had to go somewhere warm. I was very, very analytical in my college decision process. I came up with a list of the things that I had to have in a school, and it boiled down to only about 5 schools fit that mold because it had to be in a city, it had to be warm. I didn't really want it to be a southern feeling school for whatever reason, just culturally. I think I was going to not feel totally comfortable at a completely southern school. My mom had an excellent experience with sororities, and basically she had some issues in college, and were it not for her sorority, she would not have been able to finish her last couple semesters there. So her sorority was near and dear to her heart. So she instilled in me how important that was to her. So I wanted to go somewhere that had a strong Greek system. And I wanted a medium-sized school, and there just aren't that many places that all
So you
qualify.
landed at?
So I went to Tulane in New Orleans. One of my not so smart moves in my life was leaving there. I stayed for 2 years, and then
Well, that's what I was trying to get at, because you're always flying the Michigan flag. So I was trying
Yes.
to. Okay, so go ahead.
So then I ended up finishing up at University of Michigan, Dearborn, which is not the main campus. And then later on, actually, I did go to U of M Ann Arbor. I have half a master's degree. So, oops, something else, probably not my smartest move, not finishing. But
you have that in common with Toni Randall. I don't know if you remember, when I interviewed her, she said, I got part of a degree. And I was like, girlfriend.
I know.
But I get it. Life happens.
And at the time, I was working like 80 hours a week. I was in the financial services industry. I was a retirement plan consultant. And I was working 80 hours a week. My husband was in law school, and I was going to school part-time. And all I could think of is this master's degree is going to lead me to a more stressful, more high-end job, and I can barely handle the life I've got right now. So,
I get it.
Yeah, so that was that.
So we've got your background. So when did you start having kiddos? After?
So my husband and I didn't think we were young when we got married, but I look back at it now, I think we were really
babies.
young.
I know.
Yeah, so I was 23 when we got married, and we waited till I was 30 to have kids because we were not in a hurry for that.
And then you have one?
I have 3 children. I've got twins. So the first two.
The first were twins?
Yes, first are twins.
Oh my God, I think I would have lost it.
Well, the good news when you have twins first is ignorance is bliss. Like, you don't know that it's hard. I didn't think actually having twins was that hard.
And your twins are boy-girl.
Correct.
So, I would have said, sweet, check, 1 pregnancy,
well,
but you didn't.
I thought I was done, and then I distinctly remember this lady approaching me in the gym saying, whatever happens, you have to have another child. And I barely knew her, and I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, my kids both just left for college at the same time.
Oh, that's so funny. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, she's like, it was devastating. And I can tell you 18 years later, it was pretty devastating when both your first leave at the same time. But we digress onto.
So you have a third sweetheart. Now, though, those children are,
so I've got
2 are graduated.
Yep, 2 graduated, just kind of starting off their careers. And then my youngest is actually, ironically, at Tulane.
So cute.
And the funny thing is of all my children, she's the one that I would have thought would never possibly ever have done anything her mother did, especially when she had to make that decision. We actually have a nice relationship, but she was the quintessential teenager. So the fact that she's not only at my college, she actually pledged my sorority and has lived both her freshman and sophomore year in buildings that I lived.
That is so neat. I love that. Something that people may not know about me is I'm a goofball, but I am so nostalgic. I'm so nostalgic, which is why I think that Needlepoint is special to me. But I think that's so sweet. And later on, when Allie says, "Oh, my mom and I did this," I mean, that's very cool story. Wow. So good for you.
And it's funny too because she'll bring up like a restaurant, and I'll be like, "Oh, you mean the one that's right next to Fat Harry's?" And she's like, oh. And she says to me all the time, "I forget that you were fun once."
Well, that means you're being a good mom. So we wanted to talk a little bit about our backgrounds because maybe people have heard bits and pieces, but we haven't gotten there. But then, so there lies your personal history. But then let's talk about your needlepoint history. So I remember you telling me that you started stitching at age,
I think 7, and we are at the cottage, and at the cottage I have my little pillow. So this is my first little sampler pillow.
So sweet.
So this is all in pattern iron wool. Let's see, I can't get the angles quite right.
It's kind of funny, but it looks great.
But isn't this funny too? Because this
of all, wait, first pillow, and she's got like stitches. Like, is this a Rhodes or no? That's a what is it when it goes into the center? I forget what it's called, but. Anyway, so she's got like Bargello and eyelet, and this is like, I mean, she's got
waffle stitches.
Fancy stitches.
I know, I'm kind of impressed with myself, I have to say. but I had a very good teacher. So anyone who's done some counted canvas work, there's a gal out there, and she's, I think, in her 80s now. Her name is Marnie Ritter, but she was Marnie Fessenden, and she owned the shop that I learned to stitch at, which also is the same building in which my current store is still in.
Oh.
So, speaking of being nostalgic.
I love that.
Yeah, so she did these little things, but this is all pattern iron. But this is back in the day, everyone says, oh, well, in the old days, it was all wool and basket weave. Well, this is all wool, but check that out. She was a woman before her time.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And then show the other one, because is that another one?
Yes, this is my second pillow. So I have to say, this is a Marnie little love fest, because she was super talented. She's like, well, what do you like? And I'm like, and I remember, telling her, how about a basket of flowers? And I'll get the angle right. Yeah.
So that was a blank canvas, and she just helped you.
She drew a line drawn, of the flowers and the little farmers and the goose and the
It's so sweet.
pig, and so super cute.
So you started stitching at age 7, and you took a class, and then did you? I mean, you may not remember, but did you kind of like continue stitching along the way, or did it sort of pick up at another point, like high school or college?
Yeah, I think I stayed with it for a while. And to be honest, one of the reasons I started, my sister had some health issues growing up. And so they were always like kind of looking for something quiet that my sister could do. And she's totally fine now. But it was five long years for my poor parents. I was too young to really get it. But so she wanted to go to needlepoint class. So that's where I was like, well, I want to go too. The typical little sister, right?
Sure. Yep.
So I was a little young probably to be there. But the irony is it stuck with me and it didn't stick with her.
Oh,
so
funny.
So then I stitched a lot, like up through middle school. And then I always say, like, when you get to high school, and then suddenly I was more worried about being cool, and it wasn't cool by me. And then I picked it back up again when I got put on bed rest with my twins.
Oh, it comes full circle. That's cute. Oh,
yeah.
good.
And then I haven't put a needle down since.
Well, and your twins are 23.
23.
So we're, again, like I said, we're at Melissa's gorgeous cottage, and there is like sprinkles of needlepoint everywhere, not just because of her own work.
No, it's a prior owner. It's amazing.
My point is, I also stopped by Melissa's shop on the way up here, and her work is everywhere. And I was like, gosh, I wish, but I have to remind myself, you've been stitching for
a lot, for many years.
Decades,
That's
almost.
what happens when I'm older than she is.
Barely. I mean, come on. I started, we'll get to that, but the point is that it's a beautiful collection of things, and you have this awesome background. So you stitched while you were on bed rest, and then, so first question, sorry, I'm going to back up. What are your favorite things to stitch? So, like, do you like a blank canvas? Do you like stitch guides? Do you have...
I'm a little all over the board. I'm not super focused with my stitching, as I think we've all heard me talk about my starteritis issues. I do finish things, but I love to start a new project. There's nothing better than starting a new project. So I generally prefer painted canvas. I do like doing a counted piece once or twice a year. I think it's a really different way of bending your brain. I like to think that stitching with thought is going to hopefully keep all of our brain sharp and keep us from being in memory care units and all that sort of good things from the things you read. So fingers crossed that, all this time spent is good for our minds as well as their souls. I like having something little to do that is travelable. I like having something off the bar that's easy to go with me. I like having big projects. I like it all. I like it all.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you are a giver of needlepoint, like a gift giver of needlepoint too, with your family, right? You do
with my close family. I will be very honest, and maybe you guys always get honesty from me. I used to be much more generous with my needlepoint giving, and then I realized that many people don't totally get it.
Yeah.
So
or understand the time and the money that's
sure. I was disappointed in some people's reaction. I don't think they realized how much of my heart was put into these pieces. So my immediate family has a lot of things. I no longer give them, like, let's say, to my child's 4th grade teacher.
I get that. I get that for sure.
So I've learned my lesson there, but I also love to give needlepoint gifts to other stitchers because they appreciate it.
Oh, 100%. That's fun. So we're in the shop I mentioned, and that shop was not originally your shop.
Correct.
So when did you started working? When did you start? Or kind of take us through that.
Yeah. So the building that I'm in has been a needlepoint or knitting shop back to 1950. And I actually learned a little bit how to knit there when I was in college because I worked at a store down the street. I showed you that little shop that I worked at just down the road.
Very cute.
So that was in the late 80s when the economy was, and so how they still hired me, I don't know, but literally there was nothing to do. So one of the cute older ladies was like teaching me how to knit in the shop. That didn't really stick. I didn't really get knitting until recently. But anyway, so I was a retirement plan consultant working full time. Then I was working part time, and I had a personal financial consulting business. And was it just in the shop a lot with our old owner who had been there for 26 years. And
so really quick, I'm going to interrupt you because what we didn't talk about is what your degrees were in. So you have accounting and finance?
So I have a what is it technically called? I think it's an economic and finance degree, business economics and finance degree, and then a half of an MBA.
So you did some financial work.
Yes.
And so I'm sorry, then go back to what you're
saying. So I went through my career as a retirement consultant, and then did some personal financial consulting, and was working part-time, was kind of home with my kids doing the financial consulting, and was in the shop a lot. And one day the old owner said to me, "Would you like to work here one day a week?" And I'm like, that could be fun. And then I thought, she's in her 70s. She might not want to do this forever. And I just kind of alluded a little bit to this background of retail. So during high school and college, I worked in retail jobs and always loved it. And I remember talking to my dad and saying, I would love more than anything to own my own store someday. And he was a financial consultant himself. And he's like, you're insane. The hours stink. The pay stinks. Yep. You'll work your can off. That's a bad choice. Don't do it. And my father's passed away. He died when I was 29, and I always laugh now. I'm like, he's probably up there now rolling his eyes saying, I told you not to do this, but I will get into that, but I do love it. So anyway, so I started working out there one day a week and became the main needlepoint teacher. And then when she was ready to retire, she approached me, and here we are. So yeah.
Very cool. And it's been how many years since
I missed our anniversary because we were so busy. It's 3.5 years. 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so have we covered, I'm sorry, I'm going through my notes.
I know,
we're kind of a hot mess. So we decided we wanted to make sure we covered some personal information and then needlepoint information, shop information. And then I have a couple of fun questions, but do you think we've gotten have we covered everything?
I think so. The one thing I think that we should both talk about just for a second, because people ask me this all the time, is how we got into business, but then what we really like about it and what we don't like about it.
Oh, good question. That's a great question. So what is your favorite thing about having the shop?
I think the favorite thing is that I love all of my customers, and we'll be honest, every now and then there's a grumpy Gus, but we love all of our customers 99.9% of the time. And it's every day's a new day. Like, there's never a dull moment. You're in charge of what you're doing. I am the CFO. I'm the chief marketing officer. I'm the chief bathroom cleaner too. We're the chief of everything.
Yes.
And so if we decide we want to take a turn in a different direction, we take a turn in a different direction. We're not asking anyone's permission, and we're just hoping for the best. So that part's really great.
Can you say what you don't love?
I think the downside, and I think you're better about this than I am, I'm not a natural risk taker. So I get a little bit, like, all that is great that it's in my control, but then it's nerve-wracking that it's in my control, because what if I make a mistake? Like, I think about that all, like, I'm always worried about what if I make a mistake.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself, the world will not stop spinning on its axis. It's just needlepoint. It'll all be okay. So, so it's, most of the time it's great. Every now and then it gives me a few gray hairs. There we go.
I can't see them. They look good. Okay, so what are your favorite things outside of needlepoint?
Well, you guys hear me talk about my dogs quite a bit.
Yes,
so,
the puppies.
So we love
They're not
our
here
puppies.
with us right now, but I think they're coming, right?
Yeah, we had to record early before they got here because God knows they'll bark, whatever. They're pretty good. They're not the best behaved dogs. So, yeah. So my dog's pretty great. My kids are pretty great, and
you maintain reading book club too, right? Aren't you a reader?
I have dropped out of so many book clubs. I can't even tell you. I'm the worst book clubber because I
didn't mean to put you on the spot. I really thought you were a big reader.
I am a big reader.
Well,
you've got that part right. I can't stand. I guess I have not found the right book club because it was either like they were too serious or they were too fluffy, or I'd go and they'd be like, well, we can't talk about the end because I didn't finish it. And I'd be like, well, I did my homework. Yeah. Anyway, I'm kind of a book club dropout, but I do love to read.
You do a lot of reading, and there's books all over this place, so yeah, I know that for sure.
My dilemma now is I've actually been listening to more books because then I can listen and stitch at the same time.
Well, and that's the point I was getting at, is that I'm not sure how you could be so prolific with all of your needlepoint and still read so much. So that's a struggle that I have, but we'll get to me later. So I have one last question, and I think you're going to say it different than I am when we flip.
Okay.
But do you have a deep, dark secret?
I hate these questions. I hate these questions. Do I have a deep, dark secret?
So I think I know a couple things.
I have one that's more like, I don't know if this is what you want, but I'm going to go with it. One of my biggest regrets is that I was supposed to go to semester at sea. That when I said I left Tulane and went to U of M, I was supposed to go semester at sea that semester. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with semester at sea, but it's like, to me, it should be everyone's dream. You literally get on a cruise ship and you go around the world and take classes for a semester and get college credit.
That's fair. I was going to say, I don't like people saying regrets are for dinner parties, as we know. But I understand.
I blew it. So 25 days before I went, I decided I didn't want to see the world with a bunch of little rich kids.
Oh.
And so I got on my little high horse, as many college students will do, and kind of gave up an opportunity of a lifetime.
Instead, did you pack up your bag and be a hippie and travel around Europe at some point?
Instead,
because I'm thinking cruise ship.
Instead, I took 3 classes at the U of M Dearborn, and had no friends, and dumb.
Well,
so hindsight's 2020, and someday they have a retirement version of this trip. I mean,
can we needlepoint?
Probably not right now, but they have a semester at sea for retirees. So at some point, I'm thinking, well, so maybe in 20 years, I do what I didn't get to do when I was 20
I think that's
years
great.
old.
So you just resolve that regret later on.
Exactly. So it'll be my sunset cruise, so to speak.
That sounds like we won't get a goofus. So I think that's great. I think that's probably what people were hoping to hear about Melissa McCloud. I don't know. I guess we can.
As good as it gets.
There's a comment section at the bottom if anybody
let
has
us know what we didn't answer. And
but this is, I don't know about you, but it feels very awkward.
It feels very awkward.
I don't not only because we don't understand the camera angle, but also because I'm just not. I love to talk, but I don't really love to talk about myself. Believe it or not.
No, it's hard, and it's hard to not look at you too.
Well, and we're not professional journalists, so we don't really understand camera angles,
and we don't have a professional photo crew either. So
darn it, or makeup.
No, we're missing that too. Okay, so we heard all about me, Snoozeville. Time to hear about you.
It's not Snoozeville at all.
So tell me, I know you grew up. You always talk about how you grew up on a farm, but I really want to know about this farm thing. Were you literally out there shoveling the troughs?
So, ish. So my mom says, Megan, we didn't really grow up on a farm. Okay, when I was born, my parents lived in a farmhouse that my grandparents owned on acreage in what I would call farmland mid-northern Illinois. It was called Polo. If anybody wants to do their Google searching.
Well,
it's
that
a
sounds
tiny
fancy.
Little town. Polo. No, it was not. But
it wasn't where Ralph Lauren was from?
No.
Just checking.
No. Unless Ralph Lauren makes chambray,
coveralls.
Coveralls, yeah. So yes, small farm town. My grandparents owned acreage outside of another small town called Sterling, which was the big city. But anyway, so yes, so I was born. I grew up there for 7 years of my life. So it was not a working we didn't have we had hog runs and it was a working hog farm at one point, but we had we literally had barns and places where there were animals. But what we had was a lot of acreage around us. So my dad farmed crops. So we had soybeans and corn and seed corn and things. So, and we also had cattle. So I have pictures of me and my brother like in our little underpants out at a well playing in the mud when I'm little. So I mean that's a farm. Like my kids aren't in our backyard pumping well water with mud around us. So I mean, for all intents and purposes,
but were you up at 5 a.m. like
no, I was not
seeding the land. Sorry.
No, but my dad was. And so I grew up with
you were the lazy
hot
kid.
breakfasts. I was 6. I mean, maybe people were 6 driving tractors.
I just love to give you grief.
I know. But I did ride, like we have pictures of me like in combines and in tractors. And one of the things that I love the most is the farm next to us was had a strawberry patch out back. So our property was kind of wide and theirs was narrow and it went like way straight back and it was a strawberry field. And behind that, I think it was a small orchard, so you could pick. But I do remember like picking strawberries and canning, and that stuff was fun, like snapping green beans and shucking corn. And I joke because I think that a lot of that is very grounding when you are growing up. Like it's not like I was living off the land, like making my own fires and stuff, like scavenging for food. But we didn't have like like Macy's, like we didn't have. I mean. Chicago was our closest big city.
Okay.
We had Rockford, Illinois, also nearby. But so, I literally grew up like my mom was part of a group called Home Extension, which the women would come to our house and they would drink coffee and they would like do embroidery or they would like make projects and things. And I think my mom is a beautiful seamstress. And
you've said that before.
After the farm, we moved to the big city of 16,000 people. And I remember as probably a middle schooler, my mom in the summer would be like, "You're going to learn to sew." So I'm like in the basement with the sewing machine, just like angry because she's making me like sew. I remember like boxer pants, like pajama pants or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so but before that, like at the dime store, we would have the little embroidery. Do you know those like stamped,
right.
And you're like learning like satin stitch and running stitch. And so I think that like a lot of that background is what has kind of brought me to where I am. But so yes, I if you want to say that I did not grow up on a farm, that's fair. But I did.
I just want to picture you shoveling out barns. Like I want to see you mucking some stalls.
It was not, no, I was not shoveling hay. I was not doing any of that. But we did have like farm cats that were like just cats running around in the barns. And like I have pictures of me like with baby dolls and kittens and, I mean, cute. So I did have like a pretty wholesome, like little, like, I don't know, first 10 years of my life, let's just say. But then after that, we moved to what we would call the city, which is like crazy when I think about it because it's 16,000 people. But we had like a small mall, but we still didn't have like skyscrapers.
More suburbia.
And, so I mean, I am definitely a farm mouse, if you will, like not a city mouse, like a country mouse, not a city mouse. It's just what I'm more comfortable with. Yes, so I grew up, I have 2 brothers, and so I am not faint at heart. There was a lot of sports going on when I was growing up, but I was nerdy. I was super nerdy. I wasn't an athlete.
Oh, we didn't talk about how nerdy I was. I forgot about that, yeah.
Well, so like I'm on the sidelines of Little League learning how to keep score at baseball games, like not playing baseball or softball.
Right,
so
right.
But yeah, so there's that. So I grew up in a small town. And then I, because of a friend of mine from high school, I decided to go to Truman State, which is northeast Missouri. And that felt comfortable to me too. It was a rather small school. My dad wanted me to go to the University of Illinois, and I was like, Dad, so the campus of the University of Illinois at the time was the same size as my hometown. So it just wasn't comfortable.
Not surprising, right?
So I went to Truman, and a little did I know that a lot of St. Louisans actually matriculate through Truman. So I made a lot of friends from St. Louis, a lot of friends from Chicago.
And how many students go to school there?
That's a good question. I want to say it's like 5,000.
Okay,
Does
so
that
it's small?
Maybe, I think. I don't know right now, but
right.
It was
when you were there.
It was a comfortable, large enough, but not,
right.
Tiny. So I'm sorry, I'm not even sure how to connect all these dots in my life. But so undergrad, I got it. And someone asked me the other day, what's my degree in? So I went to college thinking I was going to have a business degree. We all know that that's a mess. But, being from a small town, everyone said, like, get a degree. I keep seeing this light behind me.
Well,
Sorry.
it wasn't sunny when we started, and now it is. So we're trying to block the sun. So, yeah.
So my, being from a small town, it was like, get like a degree that's going to matter and you can get a job. And so I went with a business degree. It was a disaster. I think I almost failed out of accounting like the first semester.
Never told me this.
Oh, yeah.
This is interesting.
Yeah. And so I'm at a liberal arts school and my dad's like, well, you've got to have a degree that matters. So I'm like, well, how about journalism? And my parents were like, oh, geez, here we go. So I did. I have it's a journalism emphasis at a liberal arts school.
Gotcha.
So yeah, one of the things that people always made fun of me, and this is why this is funny, is I was on the True News.
Oh.
But it was like the
hard-hitting journalism.
Exactly right. So it was like the what's that called? Like the closed circuit station that the campus had, and so you'd see me like doing. I mean, it was really bad, but.
Well, this is why you're good at this, though. People always ask me if I have a degree in broadcasting or a background in broadcasting. So I'm like, no, but
not so much.
Megan does.
Well, sort of. I mean, light, but yes. So I did that, and then didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated, and so I had in the summers worked at the Grand Hotel, which is on Mackinac Island in Michigan, which is what
special place.
Gave me my Michigan kind of roots, and so I worked in the shops in retail. And then, so I spent a couple summers there and I loved it. I loved hospitality. I loved retail. And then, yeah. So when I graduated, I didn't know what I was going to do. I got a job there in sales, like doing convention sales.
Right.
The week after I took that job, they planted a bunch of Martha Stewart magazines on my Martha Stewart weddings. And they were like, well, the wedding planner is leaving and you are the only woman on staff. And so tag, you're it. And I was like, I've never even been to a wedding. I'm 22. Like
I grew up on a farm.
Yeah. Come on. Do you really want me planning high-end weddings at a resort? But anyway, it was an awesome experience. I learned a ton about hospitality and event planning. And how do I fast forward? So Reader's Digest version. So I do the weddings at the Grand Hotel. I decide to move to St. Louis. I do weddings for a third-party planner in St. Louis. Use my event planning experience to get into development. So I was actually, people may not know this about me, I was a fundraiser for higher education for 15 years. So that's education parlayed into careers. Right. So wedding consulting.
Well, and I think a lot of that has served you well from what I see of your successes in this business, because there's so many things that make me uncomfortable that I see you fully embracing. Like if you sadly had plans for a big retreat, an event that did not happen, and because that's just like what's in your back pocket because you're so good at it. So
I think it's funny, like what you were saying earlier, all the things that you do that sort of lead you up to what your finale. And I mean, I hope this isn't necessarily my finale, but I expect right now that it kind of.
You got to go semester and see with me when we're 80. So I'll be 80, you'll be 70. We'll stitch our way around the world.
That's right.
Anyways,
That's right.
We digress. So I feel like you have all these pockets of things that are adding up to you.
I think everybody
embracing this small business ownership, which is really great.
Yeah, I mean.
So when did you start stitching, though? We didn't talk about that.
Oh, good question. So
you actually had crafty background, but you haven't talked about actual needlepoint.
So when I moved to St. Louis after I left Michigan, I don't know if people know this, but St. Louis is actually a pretty needlepoint hotbed. I mean, there's 3 or 4, there were at one time at least 4 active needlepoint shops in St. Louis.
Which is why I was so excited. We didn't mention this, that my oldest daughter went to school in St. Louis.
Oh, that's right.
Which is kind of how we first met. And I was like, oh, she's going to school in a city with 4 needlepoint stores.
Yay!
Like the things that people get excited about it in our world is ridiculous. But right. It's a big needlepoint city.
That's right. And so I noticed everyone wearing belts. So needlepoint belts are a really big deal in St. Louis. People have belts. And I think, I believe it or not, coming from a farm, I like a preppy, like a little bit. I kind of like that classic preppy look. And I was like, these are really cute. I wonder how I want to do this. And so I was curious about it, but I didn't really do anything about it until I met my husband in St. Louis. His mom is a knitter and a needlepointer. Yes. And I don't even know how it came up. I actually think my sister-in-law said, I'm going to needlepoint something. And I was like, oh, cool. I've been interested in that.
Right.
And so we went and I got some supplies and I tried to learn. And frankly, I had a really hard time learning basket weave. I understood tent stitches, but
right.
I don't know what it is. Like I like people and I like personal interaction, and I tried to find YouTube videos. And so this was probably 8 years ago.
Well, can I tell you a little secret? We haven't discussed this yet. I don't think I've ever admitted this. I learned how to stitch, as we said, when I was 7. When I went to a needlepoint class when my kids were 2 years old, I said, I've got this big line down my canvas. Why do I have this big line? And she said, well, are you continental stitching or are you basket weaving? And I said, what? So I had been stitching for 20 years before I learned how to basket weave.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, yeah. So I picked up pretty quickly the tent stitch, but this is going to be kind of a funny story. I don't know if I've really told anybody this. So I picked
all our true confessions, our true needlepoint confessions.
It's sort of fun. I don't know if anybody cares, but we'll see how many people actually watch this, right? So my mother-in-law was like, well, I know how to do a tent stitch. I can teach you continental, whatever. So she taught me that, but I didn't know how to basket weave. And I knew that there was like a better way. So I did my first couple of belts. I did kids' belts. One of my first ones was for my nephew. And I did belts going, Continental. Yeah. Which is fine. And it got the job done. And he still wears it to this day. And it's really cute. So I want to say this was like probably 7-8 years ago. But I knew I wasn't doing it quite right. And so I Googled, I got frustrated. I tried to sign up for classes. I just couldn't find any. And so I finally Googled Needlepoint in St. Louis. And it came up with a Groupon for the Needlepoint Clubhouse.
So funny.
Yes. And it was, 2
was
classes
like the
for whatever.
First time Groupon was like out the gate practically too.
Yeah, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. So yeah.
Well, they did they did a lot of restaurants at first. They didn't do retail for a while. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So it was a Groupon Needlepoint Clubhouse. And so I bought it and I called and I sat down with a woman who to this day, her name's Judy. She's in St. Louis and she is a beautiful stitcher and a really good teacher. Nice. And I picked up on basket weave pretty quickly because I already kind of understood it-ish.
Right.
And I never even went back to my second class. She taught me, like I said, I really think it had to do with her teaching. It was really good. And she right off the bat taught me pulls and letters. And, so I never went back to my second class, but then I always went back to that shop because I really sort of felt indebted to them and they did a nice job of teaching me. I was stitching belts like a crazy person. I would stitch belts for everybody. And I found for me, and I think a lot of people find this, it was something for me to do because you can always tell, like I'm always shifting around. I just can't sit still. And so like watching television felt lazy to me. So at least if I was stitching and watching TV, I was like accomplishing something.
And I think that's what most stitchers say. Like very few stitchers, I think, can sit down and watch TV. It seems like a common thing that people tell us all the time.
And I don't know if I realized that it was helping with anxiety at the time, but now I know that it was like something for my hands and something for my mind. And but I just knew that I liked having something going.
Right.
So I did a ton of belts, and then.
But have you told me you've never stitched a belt for yourself?
No,
that's a crime.
And back to that whole gifting, I'm a gift giver by like my love language. And so to me, it's so fun to make something it's like double the enjoyment to make it and give it. So I don't know. Anyway, I was in the shop one day, feverishly trying to stitch the end of a belt.
This is when you're just still Joe Schmo stitcher, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Still Joe Schmo. Don't even know the names of the people. Megan Schmo.
Except for lovely Judy.
Judy wasn't even there that day, yeah. But anyway, so I'm feverishly stitching and like so embarrassed because I have to hit this deadline. I'm making it for somebody, and the finishing belts were going in like the next morning. So I was sitting in the shop trying to hurry up and finish.
Those customers.
I was, and I overheard the women's talking about hiring people, and I was like, I'm really sorry to eavesdrop, but. I have just been learning to stitch. I know how to stitch. I know how to basket weave. I've done a bunch of belts, and I have retail experience. Would you consider me? I'm like, I have a full-time job. And before I could even like tell all the bad reasons why they shouldn't hire me, I don't really know a lot of stitches. I only stitch blah, blah, blah. They were like, here's your paperwork.
Wait, so you were working full-time?
I was working full-time.
And
but
you were
I had
married?
Always had a side hustle. I love retail. So I had worked at the Grand Hotel. I worked in their shops, and then I worked at J. Crew for years.
Right.
I just always kind of had a side hustle because I'm just sort of a busy person like that. And so, so I always had like a side, and I did wedding consulting while I had a full-time job. And
so you were married and no kids at this point? Because we forgot to talk about your darling little Cutie pies. So you have 2 children who are 7 and 5?
I have 7 and 5, a second grader and a kindergartner, right? Well, he's not a kindergartner. He was going to be, sorry, but COVID.
Well, that's 2020. Yeah.
Anyway, so 7 and 5.
At this point, you didn't have children?
I think I did. I think I had Claire.
And your husband was not going to kill you that you were working full-time and then taking on a side job?
I just have always been super crazy busy, and he's just not as much, and so he's
he
like
was
happy to
totally
be at
cool
home.
to be
Yeah, I
like,
don't know. I don't think
what
he
a
was
good
totally
dad.
cool with it. I mean, let's see if he watches this. He's gonna be like, no, he wasn't totally cool with that.
I wanted to freaking kill you.
I truly think what it always was is that I was doing a job that I did for benefits and for a career,
Right.
and for making money, and I never did what I really liked, which was retail and people, and I got people, so I don't know
Right.
what it was, but I think I always had this like need for some extra fulfillment, whatever. So before I could get it out of my mouth, they handed me an application, and I started working.
funny.
Like, they were open Wednesday evenings and Saturdays.
So you guys have applications at your store?
Maybe it wasn't an application. Maybe it was just the W-2. Like,
that's all we got at my shop. We're not that good. So I was impressed by that. Okay,
I just remember the paperwork. I think they were like literally like, here, let's go ahead and give you the new hire paperwork.
Okay.
Anyway, they were kind of desperate for help. And so it was like, sure, we can add somebody else to the mix. Let's do it. So I did that. Along the way, there was scuttlebutt about them closing the store because the 2 women who owned it were, kind of
ready to retire.
Kind of in their second careers, I think, too. And I was like, well, wait, why are you closing it? And they were like, well, who wants to buy a needlepoint shop? And I was like,
there's a sucker in every crowd.
Maybe that's exactly right. Maybe I do. I don't know. Maybe I do. So anyway, we had a conversation. The women were lovely, and I bought the shop. It was 3 years. I missed my anniversary too. 3 years in September.
So funny.
I have the great fortune, and I know that you didn't, just because of nature, didn't have this, but the 2 women who I bought the shop from are still involved in my business, and so nice. Thank God for them.
Yes,
because
that was something that was promised to me, but she kind of let me down because she, died after.
Aww, she passed away.
Yes, it was very sad, very unexpected. Sorry, never mind. But
but anyway, so they're still involved. Thank God. I had my first market, like literally, I think maybe 8 days after I signed the paperwork.
And I think that's where I saw. I'm trying to think how we connected. So I know the very first time I met you was at your old location, and I think you were planning on buying it but hadn't bought it yet, and I went to a class there.
That sounds about right.
And then we were in Melissa Prince's booth in Dallas, and you walked in, and I'm like, hey. And you're like, wait, you were in my shop. And you were, I have to say, looked a little frazzled.
Well, I mean, think about it.
No, I mean, just like your first market and...
Well, first market is...
Oh, my God.
Markets are crazy. Markets are awesomely crazy, I know now. But, and I was obviously a fish out of water. I mean, let's be honest. So I'd stitched belts. I knew there was such a thing as designers. I knew there was such a thing as other stitches. I knew there was
a lot more than you're giving yourself credit for, but yes.
But I didn't understand the extent to which how awesome and huge this industry is. Yes. And so being like thrown into like this, it was so awesome, but I was just like, and I love people, but I was feeling like, I don't know, it's all this money we're spending, and I was a new business owner, so yeah, it was nuts. But so does that cover my needlepoint and how I owned a shop? And now
I have to say though, what I was really impressed by when I first met you, that still is mind blowing to me, is that when you first bought the shop, you still had your full-time career, although you were paring it down. But I'm like, wait a minute. So you work 3 days a week at your other job. You have 2 children, and you own this business.
That's not even true. I was working full time. My intention when I bought the shop was for it to be an investment. I was like, this shop appears to be running well.
Right.
I think
you weren't planning on being hands-on like you are.
I intended to. The women who sold it to me were not, online. They didn't have any internet, like social media presence. And I thought, well, this business can grow just because of social media and the internet. And so my intention was to put like some money and some time into some marketing and some social media, and that I would just get a discount on stitching and go to markets and own a retail shop. Doesn't that sound fun? I mean, truly, that's what I wanted to do. And it did not take long. It took, so from September to March, I started like, my heart was not in my old job. I was not doing a good job. I was not focused. I was like, this is so like, I just,
Right.
It sounds weird, but I just like felt my calling. Like I knew that I needed to go do my thing. And it totally freaked my husband out because I am not super a big risk taker. My husband's definitely risk averse. And I told him, I said, I can't do this job anymore. And he was like, wait, what? You have amazing benefits. You've been there for 10 years. You have an awesome salary. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I can't do it. So I didn't. So I left. And I have not looked back. And I'm so glad I have that experience of having taken like a giant risk like that so that I can tell other young people about it and my kids. And because I grew up, and I'm sure you did too, with hardworking parents who, my mom just retired from 30 years in the same job. And I think that was the generation before us, or just, you don't take risks, you do your thing. And there's so much value in that, but there's also a lot of value in just like jumping out of your skin and doing something so way different. And like, it almost makes me tear up because the life that I now have, my job, like I don't get the pit in my stomach that I used to get when I would wake up and know I had a long day and get my kids to the babysitter and whatever. Like this is, if you have the opportunity to do something that you really love, you should do it because it's incredible, the friendships and whatever. So not to be a sap, but it's all worked out really well for me.
Yeah.
So
well, you do it well. That's for sure.
And I don't know if I feel like I've talked enough about myself, but is there anything I hate talking about?
Well, so tell us something that no one knows about you. Tell us some like bizarre dream if you weren't.
So I was like in like okay, remember I'm from a small town, so I'm like small fish small pond, but I used to sing a lot. So I sang in choirs and children's choirs and whatever, and I sang in college. I was in like the college. I love singing. I love singing in the shower.
Are you going to sing for us now?
No.
Darn,
I think I'm a good
tried.
singer, and if I could do like anything, like I love my family, I love my friends, I love my roots. Like I just said, I'm a farm mouse, but if I could be like on the road, like with a microphone and drinking like champagne at night or something and like singing and dancing, like I don't know if I really want to be the star of the show. I kind of think maybe I would just want to be like a roadie.
You want to be the backup
like a
singer?
Backup singer. Yes.
You want to be a Pip. You
and
don't want to be Gladys.
Like, I want to be like learning the little doo-wop dances because I'm a terrible dancer, but I love it. And like, I love music. In my shop, it is not quiet. There's always music. I'm a weirdo. I love so karaoke, funny. Especially after a couple glasses of wine because then I have no fear.
So funny.
Nothing to do with needlepoint, but
that's awesome. Super fun. Well, I will tell you that you said not to be a sap earlier, but I'll be a little sappy. Our friendship means so much to me, and my daughter makes fun of me all the time because I used to say to her, because she's 23, she's of that generation, I'd be like, I don't understand how people can get to be such good friends when they've never even have barely been together in the same state. Yeah. And we've probably been together in the same state a total of 10 days maybe in our lives.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I so value your counsel and your friendship. And
same. So people, and I appreciate that sentiment, and it's same. But people do ask us, how is it that you became such good friends?
Because we're both insane. Sorry.
Well, I think the truth is that we both have, first of all, we have complementary backgrounds and experiences. I'm like goofier and marketing and whatever, and Melissa's more like thoughtful and numbers person. She's like, I like, here's an example. I said, what did I say? The color name of something the other day. And you go, 202HL or whatever. I think we were talking about Krynic, and I'm like, well, that's called bright yellow. And she's like, well, and she blew off the number, and I was like, well, I don't know. Yeah. But we both knew what we were talking about because we can speak the same language, but we say it in different ways. Yes. And I also think that when I call you and I'm freaking out, you're really good at like being calm. And it's so nice to have a colleague. So we were talking about it. We're both super competitive. Like, she's like, I sold these, and I'm like, oh, why can't I sold that? You know, like super competitive, but we rah-rah for each other at the same time.
For
and
sure.
I think if you can find a friend that you have a shared experience, and but you can trust each other to be, you know, honest with each other, but yet cheerlead, and you know, I don't know.
Well, and I think this whole thing started I think it was maybe not too long after we met each other, we were both like, well, we've got some older canvases from our prior owners. Like, how are we going to do this? I don't know how to get rid of them. And I think you had the brainstorm. Somehow we came up with it, and we did our trade where we just swap canvases, because it's new eyes, because they're great canvases. They're just, you know, for whatever reason, weren't working for our in-store customer.
And that's when we had a lot more walk-in.
That was when we had walk-in customers. So we started out doing kind of stuff like that together, which was super helpful. And then it turned into like, well, I can't solve this problem. How do you solve that problem? And we just really became each other's sounding boards. And when you're in business for yourself, it's really great, but you also have no one to turn to who has, you know, walked in your shoes. And that became so utter and completely apparent about March 25th of this year. I remember driving to work one day and calling you and saying, and this was right after Michigan had shut down. And I had shut my store 2 weeks before, but that now I had to be shut, which went from meaning I couldn't have any employees in the store. I was there by myself. And I remember calling you just in like the deepest doldrums, like, it's been 3 years, we're going to lose our businesses. Like, how is this going to happen? And you just were like, put on your big girl panties, Missy.
Really?
Yeah, you're like, get online. You can do this. This is what you need to do. And I knew you were right, but I was like, again, I'm not a big risk taker, and I was scared to do it. And
I do remember saying, go on, just like do a live on Instagram. And you were like, no, I can't talk to the camera.
I
was
can't
like,
do
yes,
that.
you can.
And
yes, you can.
Here I am.
And now here we are,
Crazy
like barely
ladies.
makeup done, and about to cry.
So yeah. So and then I think during like that whole shutdown period, we probably talked to each other 3 times a day, because we're barely getting by for all sorts of reasons. I mean, we all have had the whole world's had a hard 2020, and we've all had to count on each other and lean on each other. And you know, there's lots of cruddy things about 2020, and there's lots of really great things about 2020. So
well, and you know, this podcast was born out of both of us being kind of like create, what do we say?
Create
connections, and just being lonely and loving this community, and we do love this community. That's the other thing. You all have been amazing, and this has just been super fun. So I hope you love what we're doing. And I guess the beauty of COVID, and not only like have we had fun and support each other, but we just really do get along really well, and it's just fun. And so we hope you haven't been totally bored by this. But people do ask us all the time, who are you? Why are you friends? Whatever. And we can't
we'll
really
be able to tell them where to go.
Explain it, but hey, you know, and so
that's it.
I think that's all we've got.
Yeah. So what we have for the rest of our day, though, is lots of market shopping. So it is, as we said, the weekend of virtual market. And we haven't really even started. So that's our next task, is we're going to shut down this computer and open up a new window and shop away for all of you. So I'm super excited to see what our industry peers have in store for us. And, you know, it's a different way of doing business, but, you know, everything about 2020 is a little different. So we're just going to embrace it and find lots of good stuff for people. And so glad everyone's home stitching, and glad it's bringing some people some peace and some joy, and hopefully some community, even if it's not face to face.
Stitch on, friends, and keep watching the podcast. We actually have been sitting here planning a little bit too, so we have some awesome stuff in store. Sure. Keep following, and thank you for following, and have a beautiful weekend. The sun has come out, which is why I've got this giant glare behind me.
It's your halo.
It's
just
just
you're an angel.
I'm angelic, right? Anyway.
Have a good weekend, everybody. We appreciate you. Bye-bye. I can't find the off button. That's my blooper.